A vast landmass that consisted of current-day South America, Africa, and Australia that started breaking up some 100 million years ago, well before the evolution of mammals. Since then, floating on its own, some 1,200 miles southeast of Australia, this cluster of islands might seem to have developed quietly on its own, away from the hungry, predatory jaws of the rest of the world. On Saturday, January 7th, 2006, we left New York. We flew across the international date line. We crossed the equator, and on Monday, January 9th, we arrive in Queenstown, New Zealand. New Zealand consists of two main islands, North Island and South Island. If New Zealand were stretched out along the west coast of the United States, the country would extend from Los Angeles to Seattle. Set on the edge of the glacial Lake Wakatipu, with stunning views of the sawtooth peaks of Remarkable's mountain range, Queenstown is the most popular tourist stop on the South Island. This town is a beautiful, year-around alpine resort. Get the lay of the land by taking the Skyline gondola up the heights of Bob's Peak, 1,425 feet above the lake, for a smashing panoramic view of the town and the Remarkables. With ready access to mountains, lakes, and rivers, the town has become the adventure capital of New Zealand. Its reputation as an adventure capital is well earned. And it was here that the sport of leaping off a bridge with a giant rubber band wrapped around the ankles, bungee jumping, took root as a commercial enterprise.
I'd rather go bowling.
Queenstown is a year-round adrenaline rush or a place for rest and relaxation. A short distance from Queenstown, the Shotover Jet leads high-speed, heart-stopping rides in the Shotover River Canyon. You can't beat the thrill, and they call this thrill therapy. An adrenaline rush you'll never forget, and they claim it's actually good for your health. It's an amazing ride. As the Shotover Canyon walls tower over you, your driver whips the boat past rocky outcrops and skims around boulders. I would not count on your HMOs paying for this type of therapy. The fascinating settlement of Arrowtown, which lies 14 miles northeast of Queenstown, literally sprung up overnight with the discovery of gold in the Arrow River in 1862. Thousands of miners from around the globe flocked to the area, and the river became famed as one of the world's richest sources of alluvial gold. The Kawara Bridge, the world's first bungee site, 143 feet above the crystal waters of the Kawara River, established in November of 1988, and the home of bungee ever since. If you've never jumped off a bridge before and have a desire to do so, this is the place to go. Would you believe that here people are waiting in line and paying $130 to do this?
In Kiwi country, the people do the flying.
We drive to Te Anau in the southwestern portion of New Zealand's South Island. Te Anau is the gateway to Fiordland National Park. Fiordland, the name generally given to the southwest coast, is a majestic wilderness of rocks, ice, and beech forest, where glaciers have carved mile-deep notches into the coast. Rivers, sounds, and lakes eat away at the land, and it rains hard and often, so that the area seems to strike a tenuous balance between earth and water. Milford Sound lies at the heart of Fiordland National Park, a World Heritage Area. A postcard come to life. Milford Sound is a landscape of pristine peaks mirrored by calm waters. Grand, serene, and wild, Milford Sound draws visitors from all over the globe to cruise its length and wonders. Milford Sound is the sort of overpowering place where poets run out of words and photographers out of film. Hemmed in by the walls of rock that rise from the waterline sheer up to 4,000 feet, the fjord was carved by a succession of glaciers as they gouged a track to the sea. We cruise completely through the Sound to the Tasman Sea. When you cruise the Sound, wildlife are often seen in their natural habitat. Nature at its most beautiful. This area is often described as the most scenic part of the world. Our visit here will undoubtedly be the highlight of our visit to New Zealand. Today, we drove to the Southern Alps to visit the Fox Glacier. The Fox Glacier descends from Mount Cook in the Southern Alps to a temperate rainforest, making this glacier one of the most unusual in the world. The glacier creeps down the mountain at an average rate of up to 3 feet per day.
Look, we had a climb through to see nice.
We have experienced the majestic beauty of Fox Glacier, Mount Cook, and the Southern Alps. Plunging from cloud-piercing mountains through luxurious rainforest to rugged beaches, the west coast on the Tasman Sea is both defined and isolated by the Southern Alps. A maze of limestone stacked high above the sea, the surreal pancake rocks, the huge swells that batter this coast have eroded the limestone cliffs, carving them into fantastic shapes. Cape Foulwind on the Tasman Sea is home to the country's most northern breeding colony of fur seals. The west coast contains the largest area of protected land of any region in New Zealand. This coastline is truly nature in the raw. We then leave the west coast, drive through the Southern Alps, traveling northeast towards Picton. We pass the Beulah Gorge Swing Bridge, New Zealand's longest swaying footbridge. The countryside of New Zealand is dotted with sheep. New Zealand has more sheep than people. New Zealand is also known for its fine wineries. Late in the afternoon, we arrive in the maritime township of Picton. Early this morning, we crossed the Cook Strait. We took a ferry from New Zealand's South Island to New Zealand's North Island. We arrived in the city of Wellington. Wellington is not just any city in New Zealand, it is the capital. As the junction between the North and South Islands, Wellington has its own dynamic momentum. Overlooking a beautiful harbor, the city also enjoys a wealth of arts and culture and some of the country's best shopping and restaurants. An essential journey for any visitor to Wellington, the famous red cable car huffs its way up this steep hill to Kelburn for a spectacular panoramic view of this capital city. Lake Taupo, with grand vistas and views, classic, breathtaking scenes of the lake with snow-capped mountains. The tiny town of Taupo is a base for exploring Lake Taupo, the country's largest lake. This area is also famous for its wild rivers and geothermal activity. At Hooker Falls, the Waikato River thunders through a narrow chasm and over a 35-foot rock ledge. The fast-flowing river produces almost 50% of the North Island's required power. The Waikato River is dammed along its length. The river below the dam is virtually dry for most of the time, but 3 times a day and 4 times a day in the summer, the dam gates are opened, and the gorge is dramatically transformed into a raging torrent. The construction of the local geothermal project had an impressive and unforeseen effect. The underground dynamics was so dramatically altered that boiling mud pools, steaming vents, and large craters appeared in an area now known as Craters of the Moon. A marked walkway snakes for 1 mile through the belching, sulphurous landscape, past boiling pits and hissing crevices. Walking through geothermal activity in the Taupo volcanic zone is like walking through history, the history of how the world began. The city of Rotorua sits smack on top of the most violent segment of the Taupo volcanic zone. Here, flower beds hiss. The rotten egg smell of hydrogen sulfide hangs in the air. Even the local park has its own thermo hotspots. Wao Taupo's Thermo Wonderland is Rotorua's hottest attraction. Violent and spectacular, boiling mud pools are the largest in New Zealand. Lady Knox Geyser erupts daily to gasps of delight, reaching heights of up to 20 meters. Huge volcanic craters, some formed by eruptions, some by internal chasms, all display a variety of geothermal features. Here we experience the raw beauty and sheer power that Mother Nature offers. A panorama of hot and cold pools and steaming and hissing fumaroles, an amazing variety of ever-changing colors. Past ochre-colored steaming pools with petrified edge. You are astonished at the serene beauty formed from and around such geothermal turbulence. There are innumerable colors of every tint and hue displayed in pools, lakes, craters, and even the tracks you walk on. Wao Taupo is New Zealand's most colorful and diverse volcanic area. The walks take visitors on a journey through stunning geothermal activity and unforgettable vistas. The city of Auckland is modern and vibrant, the largest city in New Zealand, and home to 1.3 million people. It is also the center of commerce and industry, and is as diverse, multicultural, and sophisticated as any international metropolis. Auckland is also recognized as the largest Polynesian city in the world. At 1,082 feet, Sky Tower is the tallest tower in the southern hemisphere. No, you cannot jump off this tower for $130. This jump would set you back $195.
This was a fantastic experience. If you don't try it, you're losing out on something you'll regret. Go and do it. Do it now.
The people of New Zealand are called Kiwis. There is also a kiwi fruit and a kiwi bird. The Kiwi people are very adventurous. They love the thrill of flying through the air. On the other hand, the kiwi bird is flightless. It has no wings. A short bus ride from city center is Parnell Village. It is an historic shopping area with charming and exclusive boutiques. Auckland is a port city and proud of its America's Cup victories. Auckland has the greatest number of pleasure boats per capita in the world. Auckland is known as the City of Sails. Because of our schedule, we had to decide if we were going to jump from the Sky Tower or take an evening boat ride on the harbor. We view the city skyline and the harbor bridge. Today, Friday, January 20th, we board the Diamond Princess for a 12-day Auckland to Sydney cruise. We will cruise along the South Pacific coast of New Zealand. Our ports of call will be Tauranga on New Zealand's North Island, Christchurch and Dunedin on South Island. We will then scenic cruise around the southern tip of South Island's Fiordland National Park before crossing the Tasman Sea to Hobart, Tasmania, Australia's most southern state. We will then cruise to Melbourne before reaching our final port of call, Sydney, Australia. Situated on New Zealand's picturesque Bay of Plenty, Tauranga is a lovely little port city with shops and a fun cafe scene. The formerly volcanic Mount Maunganui is the region's geological icon. White sand beaches with clear water stretch from the mount. At 6:15, the Diamond Princess leaves its first port of call. New Zealanders line the shores of Mount Maunganui to wish us bon voyage. After a day at sea, we enjoy a formal evening aboard the Diamond Princess. Located near the east coast of the South Island, Christchurch is the largest city on the island and New Zealand's third largest. Its buildings are strikingly elegant and the beautiful Gothic-style cathedral is the center of life here. Christchurch is known as the most English city outside of England. The Bridge of Remembrance, a memorial to New Zealand soldiers who lost their lives during World War I. With street names like Oxford and Manchester, and the River Avon flowing past, a visitor to Christchurch might expect to find Big Ben around any corner. Planned as a Church of England settlement, the city's founders intended for the settlement to reflect and improve upon the best features of English society. The Avon River, shaded by gracefully arching trees, a 9/11 memorial in Christchurch. Christchurch has an old-world ambience that belies the city's sophistication and modern amenities. Fine restaurants, sensational shopping, and a variety of sightseeing attractions make this city a great place to visit. We leave with fond memories of Christchurch, New Zealand. At 6 p.m., the Diamond Princess lets its mooring line go. We then cruise into the South Pacific. It spreads out over the hills at the head of one of the country's loveliest harbors, a Kiwi city with Scottish heart, proud of its heritage. Known as the Edinburgh of the South, Dunedin is gracious and dignified, one of the most prominent of New Zealand's cities. To this day, it retains its Scottish flavor and distinctive architectural character. New Zealand's world-famous Cadbury chocolate is made here. This is South Island's second largest city. The city's Scottish roots are still visible. Here, you'll find the only kilt shop in the country. And what would a Scottish city be like without a brewery? Speight's, Southland's top brewery, dates back to 1876. Dunedin was our last port of call in New Zealand. We leave New Zealand with a lifetime of memories. After leaving our last port of call in New Zealand yesterday, we cruised around its southern tip. Today, we cruise into Fiordland National Park, located on the southwest corner of New Zealand. We have previously traveled through Fiordland National Park by car and small boat. Today, we enjoy the country's most majestic natural wonders from our veranda aboard the Diamond Princess. Besides its natural beauty, you might wonder what differences we encountered when we first arrived in New Zealand. First of all, New Zealand is a day ahead of the United States with an 18-hour time difference of that of New York. The seasons are reversed. The further south you travel, the colder it gets. A sunny exposure would face north. When you drive a car, you drive on the opposite side of the road, and your steering wheel and reversed steering column is controlled by the passenger. If you're ever down under and hear about a driver who turned on his windshield wipers to signal a turn, that would be me. And yes, the water does go down the drain in the opposite direction. We are presently further south than the most southern tip of the continent of Africa. At 5 p.m., the Diamond Princess departs Fiordland National Park, setting a westerly course into the Tasman Sea to begin our 2 sea days towards Australia. Tasmania is Australia's only island state. On Saturday morning, we arrive in Hobart, Tasmania.
I'd like to welcome you guys to Australia and I hope you have fun and enjoy it. It's great place to be. Hobart's great, this market's awesome, and everyone will be really nice to you and welcome you, and hopefully you have a really good time here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
See ya.
Hobart is a city that lives in its own world, one largely forgotten until recent times, a place where lifestyle, values such as relaxed pace, clean air, and clean water still count for plenty. Old whaling ships used to dock at Salamanca Place. Today, many of the warehouses that were once used by the whalers along this street have been converted into craft shops, art galleries, and restaurants. At the boisterous Saturday market, dealers of Tasmanian arts and crafts and antiques display their goods. Arthur's Circus is Hobart's best preserved street, a collection of tiny houses and cottages in a circle around a village green. This fascinating city, like Sydney, also owes its beginning to a penal colony.
Hi guys, where are you guys from? Australia. Your name is what? You?
Heidi.
Okay. Where in Australia? You guys from the same place?
Hobart is a people-sized city, which just happens to deliver waterfront views and mountainous landscape to virtually everyone. This city has also been described as one of the world's most picturesque cities. At 6 p.m. this evening, we leave this fascinating harbor city. Located in Australia's smallest continental state, Victoria's bustling capital, Melbourne, is big on everything. There's culture and art, Victorian-era buildings, high fashion, and luxurious parks. The state, however, claims a clear distinction from its parent colony. It was founded by free settlers, not convicts. Great vestiges of 19th century architecture built following the discovery of gold are enduring reminders of a prosperous age. Melbourne's little laneways began life as rear access to properties facing big streets. Many were later roofed as arcades to provide refuge from the weather and crowds and to provide more space for shops. Today, some lanes have been reborn and hum to the rhythm of daily city life. Federation Square is the center of Melbourne, bringing together a mix of attractions and public open space, embraced by some of the most striking architecture in the world. There are beautiful parks and gardens located throughout the city. The Shrine of Remembrance is Victoria's memorial to the men and women who have served Australia in armed conflicts throughout its nation's history. We climb the steps to the top of the monument. In the heart of the shrine is the sanctuary, where visitors must bow their heads to read the inscription. One of the finest vistas of the city is from the South Bank Promenade, looking across the Yarra River to the city's sparkling towers. Late this afternoon, we leave Melbourne. We then cruise towards our final port of call, Sydney, Australia. The classic way to arrive in Sydney is by ship, cruising in under the great coat hanger of the Harbour Bridge to tie up at the docks alongside Circular Quay. Today, we did just that. Our final port of call on Wednesday, February 1st, is Sydney, Australia. One of the greatest buildings of the 20th century, the Sydney Opera House, its distinctive white-tiled sails and prominent position make this the most widely recognized landmark of Australia, an icon to a city, a nation, a continent. The city's magnificent centerpiece, officially Port Jackson, but better known as Sydney Harbour, Circular Quay is the harbour's focal point and the hub of Sydney's ferry system. This city is the oldest, largest, and most beautiful city in Australia, a carefree city with a vibe and an adventurous spirit brought about by a young population. The Sydney Harbour Bridge is the world's largest, but not longest, steel arch bridge. It has become a renowned symbol of Australia. The birthplace, not just of Sydney, but of modern Australia. Here, the 11 ships of the First Fleet carrying convicts to a new penal colony dropped anchor. This area became known simply as the Rocks. From Circular Quay, we board a ferry for Darling Harbour. We bid farewell to the Diamond Princess still docked at Circular Quay. We disembark in Darling Harbour and return to our hotel. Opened in time for Australia's bicentennial in 1988, a horseshoe-shaped bay on the western edge of the city centre, Darling Harbour is a complex with an explosive burst of activity. Here, harbourside shopping, dining, IMAX theatre, aquarium, and convention centre all come together. Sydney Tower is the highest point above Sydney. Rich in history and elegance, the Queen Victoria Building, this vast 1898 structure was restored with sweeping staircases, enormous stained glass windows, and the one-ton royal clock. This complex includes more than 200 exclusive boutiques. Sydney belongs to the exclusive club of world-class cities that generate a sense of excitement from the air. Year after year, this city is ranked the #1 city on the planet. Sydney offers style, sophistication, and great looks. Royal Botanic Gardens, the lush greenery here provides a tranquil harborside haven right in the heart of the city. Acres of lawns are some of the reasons that Sydneysiders are addicted to these gardens, where the convicts of the First Fleet tried to establish a farm. After walking through the Royal Botanic Gardens, we continue to Mrs. Macquarie's Point, named for the governor's wife who planned the road through the park. One of the few places where you get a fine view of both the Harbour Bridge and the Sydney Opera House together. We continue around the harbour to Circular Quay, where we catch a train to Chinatown. This area has been Sydney's colourful Chinatown since the early 1900s, featuring ethnic restaurants, shops, and markets. It's Saturday evening. It's Sydney, Australia. We wouldn't think of leaving Australia without a visit with its locals. Featherdale Wildlife Park gives you the opportunity to meet Australia's unique wildlife in a natural bush setting. This truly can be a unique and enjoyable experience. Sydney not only has a beautiful coastline, but a 2-hour drive west of the city puts you in the midst of one of the most spectacular wilderness areas in Australia, Blue Mountain National Park. Standing at over 3,500 feet high, these mountains were once the bed of an ancient sea. Today, this rugged and beautiful region forms part of the Great Dividing Range, linking tropical north to temperate south, while dividing coastal cities from the vast outback. Echo Point, which overlooks the densely forested Jameson Valley and the 3 soaring sandstone pillars, better known as the Three Sisters, is the scenic highlight of the Blue Mountains. The mountain's distinctive blue coloring is caused by the evaporation of oil from the dense eucalyptus forest. The Blue Mountains World Heritage Area is one of Australia's natural wonders. With easy access by ferry from Circular Quay, Manly Beach, located on a picturesque peninsula bounded by the South Pacific Ocean and Sydney Harbour. With breathtaking vistas, this is Australia's premier seaside destination. Walk through Sydney's most famous beaming face to enter Luna Park, a little bit of Coney Island in Australia. Far beyond the daily grind lies the other side of the world. Everything is larger than life in the lands down under. Over the past month, we have visited 2 very different countries, yet very similar. Down under, the lakes seem bluer, the mountainsides seem greener, and the sky more majestic than anywhere else, simply because the people's friendliness and smiles will it to be so. On Wednesday, February 8th, 2006, we leave Sydney, Australia.